back to Judicial Exploits. We're here today with a special guest. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, how you doing? My name is Hashem. Currently incarcerated, Eastern Correctional Facility. Have a background in human genetics, American history, a few other areas, but a liberal arts degree and a bachelor's of education in liberal arts from Bar College.
That's nice, man. And before we continue, I just want to allow my other interviewer to introduce himself.
How y'all doing today? The JE community, how y'all doing today? Speaking out to all y'all. J2 Shiesty here, and we're going to be talking about judicial exploits. Today's topic, we're going to be speaking on the box. So, you want to tell us about some experience you've encountered in a box?
Well, anything specific? Because I mean, the box, like, there's a whole gamut of things I can talk to you about, but, I don't want to waste your time. I would like to, if you can give me something specific, then I can go in on that.
I got you, brother. Let's talk about the mental toll that the box takes on the man's mind.
All right, so if when you think about the box, right, the box in and of itself, just knowing that you're going to the box is, first of all, it's traumatic. Just the thought process of going into the box is traumatic, right? So there's, when I speak about trauma, right, there's two types of trauma. You have the first level of trauma, which is simple trauma, and these are conceptualized by a neurologist named E. Warthier Freeman, right? So he created these terms, he put definitions to them, and he's easily searchable, on the internet or what have you, Google, so on and so forth. However, so we have two types of trauma. This first level of trauma, which is simple trauma, and so just thinking about going into the box. So
listen to this one time. What is the box?
Well, the box is a special housing unit. This is a place where they put you at for, let's say you committed an infraction. It's just like being in mainstream society. This is a microcosm of the mainstream society. So in mainstream society, you commit a crime, you get convicted, or prior to being convicted, you get placed on Rikers Island or some county jail or what have you, and you wait there until you have your court proceedings. Here would be called, it's called a care hearing, right? So the box is the place that you go when you're being penalized, so you're being held to, so that they can give you your due process on particular charges that they're alleging against you.
Right.
So,
correct.
So anyway, so in the prison system, you have special housing unit, which is also called the box, and just knowing that you're going to the box. Say you're sitting on a visit and an officer accused you of something that you didn't do, and they decide that they need to remove you from the visiting room and put you in a secure area before they can take you to a hearing and give you your due process rights in accordance to the United States Constitution. What will happen is you're on your way to the box. So just thinking about going to the box is traumatic. Right? So this is, and when I speak about trauma can be a physical or psychological wound or injury to your brain or your physical body. And then you have trauma 2, which is complex trauma. The difference between trauma 1 and trauma 2 is that trauma 1 is something that happens one time, right? But we know the box, once you go to the box, if you're going to be there for a while, it's an ongoing experience. Just thinking about being in that set of circumstances is traumatic.
And
right?
Can you tell us, like, what are some of the things that go through your head while you're going to the box and on your way?
Right. So on your way to the box, you're sitting there saying, all right, are they going to find me guilty for this? Especially if you didn't do it. Say if you happen to not do anything, but somebody alleged that you did something. So you're sitting there saying, you can't be serious. Like, and if you were sitting there with your wife, you're saying, Dad, my wife is on her way home. Like, she's trying to figure out if I'm all right. I'm not going to be able to call her because I'm going to the box. This is an ongoing trauma. So what it does is it attacks your brain, but there's different apparatuses in your brain. I don't want to go so deep into that, but there's apparatuses in your brain that process this experience. And you either go into 2 modes. So the first mode is fight or flight. So you really want to get out of the situation. You don't want nobody putting handcuffs on you. You got a problem with the officers that's escorting you.
Right.
So these are all the things that's going through your mind, right?
Right.
Or you can go in the opposite direction, which is rest and digest. It's called the reptilian brain, where it puts you in a place where you just stay still. You're like irresponsive. You ever see a person go numb to experience, and you like,
Snooze.
how did you just sit there and watch that? It didn't do anything because their mind shut down on it. So this is what the box has the ability to do to you in just one experience. But the box is never one experience, it's a bunch of experiences. So that's why I speak about complex trauma, which is trauma 2. It's a type 2 type of trauma. And what can happen is you could almost, it's a high probability that you'll never be the same again after coming out of the box. So check it. So once you get to the box, when you get to the box, what they want to do is they want to strip frisk you. So they want you to take off all of your clothes, right? And they want you to take off one piece at a time, right? And the officer searches each piece while you're standing there butt naked. Right? And they want you to lift your genitals, open your mouth. They want you to spread your butt cheeks to make sure you don't have no weapons, anything, hidden inside of the crevice. And this goes for males as well as females, right? Once you then they'll give you clothes to wear. You're given a particular cell. When you go inside of that cell, you have a mattress there in a cold steel frame. You don't have sheets. You don't have blankets. You don't have a washcloth and a rag yet to wash your face. So you're constantly being traumatized. Right now that you're sitting there, you don't even know when you're going to go to your hearing. Right? So you're still sitting there thinking about whether your wife got home safe. You know she's worried about you, wondering if you're all right. So the whole experience in and of itself, just going to the box, and we're not talking about the times that you may go to the box and you may have a staff assault. If you go to the box and you're being charged with a staff assault or something to that effect, there's a high probability that they're going to inflict corporal punishment on you, which would be physical harm, because they want to fight you. They want to get a little get back for their team member that they let you put hands on or what have you.
Right.
So the levels of trauma and the experience in the box, it varies from one individual to the next. However, with every experience, and this is what most individuals fail to realize, with every experience that you encounter, whether it's just saying hello to somebody that has an attitude and gives you a negative response, or something specifically like our topic today on the special housing unit, which is called a box, you're modified by that. You're modified by that experience. And it's a high probability you'll never be the same again after that experience.
Right.
And one, for instance, I would like to give you is I think everybody's aware of Khalif Browder, who was on Rikers Island for a period of time for a charge that he didn't do. And then he ended up coming home and ended up committing suicide. But we know that he experienced from the record, audio footage as well as video footage, it shows that he was traumatized physically, bodily, as well as psychologically. And even though he got out, he was changed. He was never the same again, and he ended up committing suicide upon his release.
And do you think this is the goal for the system for black men and women? Like, do you think they do this on purpose?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, right?
Elaborate.
Because definitely, right? And this is definitely an important topic. This is an important aspect of the discussion when you talk about the box. Because a lot of people like to talk about the mechanisms that's in place, but most people don't want to get into why they're there. What's the intended purpose of these particular mechanisms? Right? So what you have, historically, I'll give you a little brief background, is that we know that there was a policy called the Emancipation Proclamation, where Lincoln allegedly freed the slaves in 1863.
Correct.
Right? Lincoln was murdered in 1865. And after Lincoln was murdered in 1865, his vice president, which was Andrew Johnson, took over. Right? But the thing about Andrew Johnson was a known racist.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we have statements from Andrew Johnson when there was a delegation of black politicians that visited the White House in 1866. And he asked them, why don't y'all just go back to your country? However, Andrew Johnson's history is tricky because Andrew Johnson had always advocated for public education, right? Government paid for education. The stickler in this point here is that he advocated for public education for white yeomen, the white yeomanry of the South. Andrew Johnson had a problem with the slaveocracy in the South. He had a problem with the white slave masters that were getting rich off of the slaves in the South. He didn't anticipate that same public education would be given to free blacks, right? Because prior to the Emancipation Proclamation, throughout the South, was prohibited to educate blacks, right? And you had these different missionary societies, the Manumission Society who educated some blacks. You had certain slave masters that would educate their blacks, but there was a particular type of education that they gave. You know, a lot of times we don't understand that because the person can read, write, and decode numbers, which would be mathematics, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have practical intelligence. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're courageous, right? So this point is essential because this is like quintessential to this whole discussion. What you found was that there were slaves. You have one slave in particular named Jupiter Hammond, which he's alleged to be the first black to publish a book of poetry. But although he was able to write this book of poetry, Jupiter Hammond would advocate for, and this was prior to emancipation, he would advocate for emancipation for blacks. But he wouldn't advocate for it for himself. And upon questioning, his statement was, I'm too old for freedom. Just give it to everybody else. That in and of itself tells you that he was traumatized, right? Because it is the human nature to want to be free, to roam about, and not to be regulated.
Right.
We start out free. We start out unregulated. I'm talking about biologically start out that way, right? Because the emotional brain is what is prominent first. The emotional brain, neuroscience has shown that the emotional brain functions milliseconds faster than the rational brain, right? So we start out as emotional creatures. And it's usually between 0 and 2, 0 and 3. It varies depending on what paradigm you're looking at. You have Piaget's paradigm, which he was another scientist that he focused on childhood development. But the point I'm making is that if you don't develop your rational brain, then you stay an emotional creature, and discipline never enters your life to regulate you so that you can become a better individual. So going back to Jupiter Hammond knew how to spell, read, write, so on and so forth, but his spirit was subordinated. He didn't want to become independent of his slave master. And this is the system that you have in place in America today, right? The system particularly makes marginalized groups, lower class groups, and I'm not just talking about blacks at this point. I'm talking about blacks, whites. It's really about the have and the have-nots. It's about a caste system. However, what you find is that blacks have been designated as the workers of this specific society based upon the way that we entered society. And when I say entered society, I don't mean initially, because initially this was a land that you could prosper from. But in 1705, you had the slave codes that came in and created a system of structural violence. And here lies the problem, right? After the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, and then Reconstruction happened between 1863 and 1877, structural violence became prominent in the system of education, healthcare, the penal system, so on and so forth in America. And structural violence is specifically intended to target the marginalized groups. So now we're specifically talking about blacks, Latinos, people of color. And in structural violence, you have the core, the quintessential element of it, which is violence, right? Violence is traumatic, right? You bang a person across the head with a pipe, trust me, they're going to be looking over their shoulder. If they survive, they're going to be looking over their shoulder, hoping that nobody hit them with a pipe again. That's trauma, right? And it's a state of trauma that's associated with the fight and flight aspect of the nervous system, and you find yourself in a state of hyper vigilance, right? And in being in that state, you're always looking for somebody to hit you with a pipe, right? And if you go into a state of hypo, which means down, vigilance, you just don't care if somebody run up on you and hit you with a pipe.
Right.
And in either one of those states, you're considered to be a desocialized individual. You're considered to be asocial, anemical, and a type of individual that's not that mainstream society doesn't see fit for America as an American citizen. So So although blacks and Latinos and individuals that's born in this country have birthright citizenship, it's your behavior that allow the authorities and everybody else to say, this is an individual that I can do whatever I want to. I can shoot him 8 times, 9 times. I can sit on this individual's neck for 8 minutes and 40-something seconds. He doesn't even matter. I don't have to give him the rights and entitlements and responsibilities of American citizenship because he's not a citizen because he's so designated that because of the color of his skin. So the system in and of itself, this system is intended to break individuals. And once it breaks you, right, you already have the skin or the look that designates you as the marginalized class. But then when behavior is into the equation, the system, you begin to make the system work on your own. So what happens is, from a distance, you know what it appears? It appears as if nobody's responsible for your behavior but yourself.
Wow.
So what we need to think about is structural violence. That's what this system is. Mass incarceration in America, that's what it is. It's a system of structural violence. And it's in a form of institutional racism. Because it's the policies that create conditions and practices that actually damages and traumatizes the marginalized groups in America. So when a guy comes out of here and he's not broken, this is why this guy's lauded by mainstream society, because it's like, damn, despite what we put him through, his character still survived. But overall, looking at these penitentiaries, and I've been in the state penitentiary to the federal penitentiary, guys are broken, man. Guys are broken. And that's why this system needs to be shut down. Because it's an intentional system of breakage. However, let's not forget, it starts in public school. So you have the School of Prisons pipeline that opens up the floodgates for mass incarceration in America.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Alright, so what was the longest amount of time you spent in the box personally?
A year.
A year in the box. Now, let's talk about the mental aspect that had on you that year in the box.
So for me, right, a lot of times I like to look at my circumstances, but you also need to, I do an analysis of myself as well as I do analysis of everything else. But when we talk about myself, right, I come from a background of doing martial arts when I was 6, 7 years old, boxing, so on and so forth. So it's like trauma is like, that's my life. Like I know how to steal my mind, right? Because there's another element of trauma. Trauma has the ability to steal you and make you stronger, and it has the ability to traumatize you and break you down. So I believe that. So when I would go in a box, like when I would go in a box, I would say, okay, this is what we're doing. Okay, get it right while I'm in here. Boom. First thing I would do is get in the box. Of course, the first 1 or 2 days is an adjustment period. Boom. Then I want to know what the schedule is for the library card, because they come around with a library card with books. Because I'm getting ready to start reading, do math push-ups, pull-ups, on anything I can hang on. I'm doing sit-ups. I'll create a program. This is the time I get up. This is the time I go to sleep. But I started this dialogue about myself in a specific way because I see myself as a little bit different, because I've been training since I've been younger. So I have that in me to say, okay, let's start this regimen right here. This is what I'm going to do. And however long I'm here, this is what I'm going to do while I'm here. Everybody don't have that training. And training is essential to the way that you deal with traumatic circumstances. So for me, like I said, that's how I did all of my box time. I wrote letters. I wrote a lot of letters. I did a lot of reading, took a lot of notes, and I worked out all day. Like some at the time, last time I was in a box, it was still a time when they had double bunking. So a lot of my bunkies would look at me like I was insane. They're like, yo, Hashim bugged out, but he get it done, and that's just what I did. So indeed, it was traumatic for me. However, the way I managed it, it's like I knew what I was up against.
Beat the odds.
So I dealt with it in a specific way. Most individuals don't really understand what they're up against, and they don't have the ability to steal their mind. You know, so I mean, hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, you definitely did, my brother. Thank you.
All right, now I got one question for you. How is the medical treatment in while you're in the box? Like, is it the same? Like, is it how it should be, and is it different depending on your skin color?
Well, see, that's something that you can't. That for me, I was never able to really track in the sense that everybody's locked in their individual cells, so you can't always tell when a white guy's putting down for, medical and going an hour or going the next day, opposed to a minority or a black or Latino brother putting down for it and going in a week. You can't really. That's something that's hard to track. That information would have to come from somebody else.
Oh, okay, I see.
Because everybody's isolated, so it's like, and then the way medical works, like, I mean, realistically, like, we're men, so a lot of times when a guy's suffering from something weak, he don't really want to let you know unless he feel like you can help him. Right? He can be like, yo, Hashem, this is what's going on with me, diagnose me. I might get that now because guys know I know all that science stuff, but it's not a regular thing where guys will go to guys to ask for help. Yo, help me with this or help me with that.